You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today, we're talking with a woman who created a way for kids all over the world to pair up with professional filmmakers and produce work about their lives, which in turn changes consciousness of kids in the U.S. when they view it. Also here is a woman who went on the holy Muslim Hajj to Mecca with her infant son and no wedding ring, and lived to write about it. And last, the social scientist who has uncovered facts about pornography that you might never have wanted to know, but you really need to. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. Inside the headlines, Dennis Hastert. Denny, that sort of friendly, chubby, teddy bear, avuncular nickname, Denny Hastert. The longest-serving Speaker of the House in the history of the U.S. Congress. Dwell on that for a minute. But of course, if you come to power in an odoriferous fashion, Tom DeLay was the one who put him in the leadership in the Gingrich House to begin with, then you can stay there quite a long time. He was loyal to DeLay, too. It was Hastert who, after 3 Texas associates of DeLay, you remember DeLay, he had been a former exterminator who made it to the House, literally. He killed bugs. After 3 associates of DeLay had been indicted over all these huge scandals of DeLay's, Hastert enacted a rule that enabled DeLay to stay as majority leader if he were indicted. I mean, DeLay did eventually fall, as did Gingrich, but not for the want of trying by Denny Hastert. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on all the congressmen who knew and said nothing about the abuse rumors. What I am going to do is look at his family, because nobody's really done that. He has been married to Jean Kahl, K-A-H-L, since the early 70s. They have 2 children, Ethan and Joshua. His oldest son, Joshua, was a lobbyist for the firm Podesta Mattoon, and he represented clients ranging from Amgen, a biotech company, to Lockheed Martin. This provoked criticism from Congress Watch. He was in Congress at the time, Hastert. His son Ethan ran in 2010 as a Republican for his father's old congressional seat, Illinois 14th District, but he was defeated in the primary, and so he is a partner in a Chicago law firm office. But even more interesting, given Hastert's attitudes towards marriage, is the reality. Here's Hastert not only being anti-woman but anti-gay, because of course he led the crusade to keep Defense of Marriage Act intact. In defending it, he said, "For thousands of years, the definition of marriage has been the union between one man and one woman. Marriage is the very foundation of our society, where families are formed and communities are established." Indeed, this man was the winner of the Distinguished Service Medal from the Boy Scouts of America, who to this day are wringing their hands over possibility of there being gay scouts or being gay scoutmasters. Oh my God. What does seem consistent, however, in his behavior, which of course is still alleged, is that it was about child abuse. It was not necessarily gay, because a woman has come forward and said she was sexually abused as a child by him as well. But let's backtrack and look at marriage. Jean Kahl Hastert. Oh, this is sad. When he was a high school teacher of history, economics, government, and social studies, he was also a wrestling and football coach. All those oiled young bodies wrestling with each other. Yum. She was a school gym teacher. She taught in the same high school. Here is Hastert writing about their meeting in his book, Speaker, Lessons from 40 Years in Coaching and Politics. Quote, "We noticed each other right away, but at first nothing clicked. But we went to the movies, attended sports events, and talked, and the more we were together, the more obvious it seemed to me that we complemented each other perfectly." Close quote. And then here he is about proposing to her from the same book. Quote, "Over Christmas vacation in 1972, in the kitchen of the little home she had rented on River Road in Yorkville, I popped the question to her. Actually, instead of going down on bended knee to ask, 'Will you marry me?' I used an indirect elliptical approach. I said, 'Well, people think we ought to get married,' I said." Close quote. In all of this scandal, spare a thought of mercy for Jean Cowell. And now it's time for our first guest. Holly Carter began her career as a writer and an editor at the New York Times, and she was even nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. Since then, she lived in Korea as a Henry Luce scholar and print and television journalist. She produced the award-winning documentary Margaret Sanger. She has been a consultant for the After School Corporation and produced the PBS series Media Matters, and she was the executive director of the Global Film Initiative. And then she founded By Kids. Holly Carter, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, talk to us about By Kids, all one word, By Kids, and the subtitle, as it were, is Their World, Their Films. Tell us.
Yep, we started this almost 8 years ago with the idea that Americans, particularly young Americans, needed to be smarter, more empathetic, and more engaged with the wider world. And so we came up with this, we now realize, very ingenious idea that a master filmmaker would be sent to a child somewhere in the world with what we deem a globally relevant story, that the two of them work very intensely together for a month to allow the child to actually tell their story through film. So in 27 minutes, the child narrates, directs, and shoots the story of their life in a way that American young people, particularly in schools back here, can engage in this child's world enough so they feel empathetic and want to be engaged.
Wow. What age bracket?
Well, we pick kids who are somewhere between 8 and 21, which is our technical definition for a kid, even though some of us are well over that age. And we found really that the best, ripest, able to have context about their life kids are about 16 or 17. So we've made 5 films thus far, and the kids have each been either 16 or 17. So they're not only big enough to carry the big camera around, but really have an ability to see their own life in the context of other people and have a little bit more political context as to whatever it is they're dealing with.
What countries?
We have done a film in Mozambique done by a young boy who lost both parents to AIDS. We've done the would-be exiled king of Tibet. I mean, he's the would-be king of Tibet who has lived in exile in India. We have a film by one of the 80 million tribal people in India, a young girl who's fought incredibly hard to be educated. We have a film by a really courageous young woman in Colombia who was displaced by the civil war there, and talks about what it's meant to be of the now the largest displaced population in the world. Right. And our most recent film that was mentored by Albert Maysles, who sadly just passed away, is done by a young girl who immigrated to America from Yemen to Brooklyn, and talks about what it was like to wear a headscarf, have a family who spoke very little English. It ended up being a story not just about Islamophobia and post 9/11 America, but a film about bullying and a film about immigration.
Wow. Wow. And these air in schoolrooms. But what about the rest of us? Is there any possibility of getting them on PBS or something like that?
Oh, funny that you should say that. So thus far we have a fabulous distribution deal with Discovery Education.
Ah,
So the films are streamed into half the schools in America.
wow.
But big news flash on the Buy Kids front is that public television, and specifically WNET, which is the presenting station here in New York, is turning the first 5 films from Buy Kids into a national series. So keep your eyes out. It looks like we're going to be premiering likely this fall in October. So exciting back to school.
Congratulations.
So everybody can see the films. We've had great success on the International Film Festival circuit, and the Discovery Education deal is great, but PBS is the cherry on our ice cream sundae.
Yes, and you send the established filmmaker like Maisles to the country to work with the child, and then give the child gets the camera and is basically on its own, his or her own.
On his or her own, with this mentor really guiding the process. I mean, they are together for the month that the child shoots the film.
I see. Okay.
The footage is then, obviously to make a 27-minute film, you need hours upon hours of footage.
Yep.
The mentor and the child oversee the editing process.
Wow.
So there's a lot of involvement by the child in making notes on, each film probably has 15 to 40 rough cut versions, and the kid is very much a part of that process. And then finally the 27-minute film that part of our model is that the child should enjoy the film festival premiere of the film. So we try hard to have the first big film festival that this film is screening. We had an amazing experience with the Doha Film Institute in Qatar. Both Jayshree, the Indian girl who's never been beyond a 2-hour radius of her tiny little village in India, flew to Doha to meet us, as did Faiza, who was coming from New York to bring her film about being Yemeni immigrating to America. We had such a good time.
I bet you did.
Amazing.
And who were the experienced filmmakers on those two? Who were the mentors?
So Joyce Chopra, who is of the Cinema Verite League of Heroes, was one of the very early female documentary filmmakers and part of the Albert Maisles, Bob Drew crowd here in New York. She made an amazing film called Joyce at 34, where she brought the camera into the labor room when she had her first child, which was really revolutionary back then. That film is part of the MoMA Permanent Film Collection. Joyce is a spectacular human being. Basically we give the mentor a list of potential kids. You're never sure until the mentor is in the room with a group of kids whether that particular child is the director you think they will be.
Right.
But Joyce went off to India, lived in the school for tribal girls where we were making this film for the month, did an amazing job eliciting quite a remarkable story.
Wow.
And Joyce and Jayshree are lifetime friends, as you can imagine, and Albert Maisles, as I said, was the mentor with Faiza.
Yes. Well, I would imagine this is totally transformative in the kid's life. Do they wind up, do you know yet, do they wind up wanting to become filmmakers?
It's such a good question, and I'll answer that by saying so much of our process is really about being conscientious that this is meant to be for American young people. So when I talk about transformation, I really love to talk about the kind of thought change that I see happen in American classrooms. But certainly it is transformative to each of these individual kids. We've tried very hard to, my professional background is in print journalism. I was at the New York Times for many, many years. So a lot of what this is about for me personally is about giving authentic voice to people that typically don't have a voice.
Right.
So this is not mainstream media. These are not typically the people we hear interviewed on CNN. These are stories sometimes that are not on the front page and certainly being told from a perspective that we're not used to. So that alone, being able to give somebody who feels incredibly marginalized and disenfranchised the ability to speak is transformative to them. What I didn't realize until we began doing it is how fundamentally transformative that is to the community that kid is from.
Sure.
So think about I mean, the first time we did it, it was kind of an inside joke, but our film mentors, in fact, that time we had two, we had beginner's luck, showed up in Mozambique. And, the joke was, this is the first time that Americans are coming somewhere to shoot, and it's not with a gun.
Oh.
It's with a camera. And that the purpose of the shooting was actually to be curious and to be open and to be allowing somebody to speak who very rarely, if ever, gets to speak.
Right, of course. To learn about our lives, people must have thought. To learn about us, yeah.
Right, that, wow, the Americans really want to know about us. And that I call that guerrilla diplomacy. I mean, that's what we should, that's what the State Department should be doing all the time, right?
That's a wonderful name for it, yes.
Right, like listening is one of the most powerful things we can do as humans.
Of course.
And it's so validating. And at the heart of what we're doing is really trying to find our common humanity rather than our differences. We can all appreciate differences in culture, but if we want to really start talking to each other and making friends, we have to find out where we have common ground.
Well, also the powers that be are so proficient at emphasizing our differences that it seems to me we've got a lot of work to do on the Venn diagram, on emphasizing where we overlap and to find the you too moment, which is always magical. And I know that this is educative and empowering to the kids who watch it in American schools, but obviously it is also transformative. Whether they turn into filmmakers or whatever, it's hugely empowering for the kids who are doing the shooting and for their own communities. So this is a wonderful idea. Thank you for doing it, Holly. It's very exciting that you're the executive director, and this is something that you've made possible. And we'll be on the watch for the PBS series. For people who want to learn more, tell the website. It's bykids.org.
Perfect.
www.bykids.org. Thank you, and thanks for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much.
It's time for a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and my next guest in just a minute is a woman who wants us progressives, you and I, to stop so vociferously defending Islam. And you know what? She's a journalist and a Muslim, too. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Asra Nomani is an Indian-American journalist. She was a friend of the murdered by radical Islamists Danny Pearl, the journalist, and his wife, Marianne Pearl. She is active in the Islamic feminist movement and the Islamic reform movement in what she calls gender jihad. And that's something very special. Asra Nomani. Asra, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much. I've just made myself a cup of tea.
So that's very friendly. It's like we're sitting in the kitchen having a tea. Exactly. I feel like I'm the last kid on the block to learn about this remarkable book, which came out some years ago now, called Standing Alone in Mecca, An American Woman's Struggle for the Soul of Islam. Which was you being a journalist and a professional one and a very good one, decided that you were going to go on the Hajj, which I think my listeners know what the Hajj is, but you made it a women's Hajj because you also retraced the steps of the great women in Islam in recovering that tradition, which is so misunderstood and ignored and erased today. And I mean, this is a remarkable book, including what you wrote, the Islamic Bill of Rights for Women in Mosques. This whole journey was fantastic. It's called listeners and readers. It's called Standing Alone in Mecca, and it's in paperback. And you get it and read it. And now we'll go on to what happened after.
Yeah, well, no worries on discovering me late. I'd like to think that I was ahead of my time. So I do believe that, the book came out in 2005, The Pilgrimage to Mecca was in 2003, but I'll tell you the issues that I deal with in the book are as pressing today as they were back then, and I would say even more so.
Much more so, yes.
Yeah. We have women being taken captive as slaves. We have Christians being killed for being, quote, polytheists, and we have, the interpretation of Islam that I talk about in the book, confronting all of us in the darkest and deepest of ways. I just got finished writing a big piece about a young woman who was brutally murdered in a mosque in Kabul, Afghanistan. On the false accusation that she had burnt the Quran. Like, of course, no accusation justifies that kind of violence, but this is such a pressing issue today, and the idea of a gender jihad is as valid today as it ever has been.
Well, it's a remarkable book. I mean, the personal voice throughout just rivets, and the story of you were friends with Danny and Marianne Pearl, and when you were pregnant, and then the story of your own giving birth to this wonderful child who begins to sort of frolic through the pages, and you just fall in love with him.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it's a remarkable story how at one point there was a drive on to sort of purge you from a mosque for being a troublemaker. Oh my God, there you are, a troublemaker. We need another book from you, Asra. When is that happening?
Well, I'm working on one now. What you glanced at in the description about the standing alone in Mecca's narrative was my confrontation with this deep issue of honor and shame in our community. I was a mother without a wedding ring, so I don't need to. Yeah, I don't need to explain. The idea of Hester Prynne is very much still alive in 21st century Islam in the world.
You bet.
And so the next book that I am working on is an investigation into the Honor Brigade, the name that I assigned to this network of people who have assigned themselves this very noble task of defending the, quote, honor of Islam and going after anybody and everybody who they think challenges that honor, even if we raise very legitimate issues. And so I'm going to hopefully take the reader into the real identities of these characters, because many of them hide behind false identities, as great as they are.
Oh, wow. We'll get you a red wig and false papers and send you underground when this one comes out. That's a very, very important book.
Thank you. Because, as you know, I mean, women are particularly the targets of this honor brigade, but men are also.
Yes.
And so what is the ultimate casualty? Rigorous civil debate. And we all want that. We all need it. And we can't allow the aggression of this honor brigade to silence us anymore.
Yeah. And you're right. It is led by people, usually, most of the time, if not always, guys, who believe they have a direct mandate from God to establish what is honor and what isn't. I mean, the recent cases in some of the villages of Pakistan where one clan raped the women of another clan to preserve their family honor because there had been a slight. So there's an act of violence committed, and the slight had been by the men of the other clan. In other words, it was between the two men, but the women were the medium through which the revenge was conveyed, and that was supposedly an act of honor. So when you have a shame culture, women are the first and worst hit, and children, of course.
Yeah, and with them oftentimes goes truth, because in these kind of honor shame cultures, the value is on saving face over truth telling.
Right.
And so ultimately, civil discourse is a casualty, and my appeal has now become one in which I really call upon people of all faiths and non-faiths to participate in this conversation without shame
Mm-hmm.
and really take back the conversation. I appeal to liberals to apply their same standards for human rights to our Muslim communities and not fear that they are being, quote, anti-Muslim. Because we as Muslims are suffering the most by the oppression of these honor codes and honor brigades, and we need kindred spirits to stand with us. And so that's why, I really appreciate everything that you do to try to bring voice to those that dare to challenge the honor brigade.
Well, you're on the front lines, and when I first heard you speak on television about, where are the liberals making excuses for these things in Islam, when we, people like you, are critiquing the people in Islam who are doing it and are also destroying Islam. But we're not backed up because the liberals are, sort of wringing their hands. Oh, we are so afraid of seeming anti-Muslim. And to be more afraid of seeming something rather than to be afraid of being it is a very bad thing. I mean, one way that I suggest that non-Muslims...
Really well put.
Well, one way I suggest non-Muslims approach it is to always link it with, I don't know, there's so many possibilities, like the American Taliban and the Christian right in this country, who also function on an honor and shame culture, who have read somewhere the same patriarchal book on misogyny, and who operate in very similar fashion. They haven't yet beheaded people or taken slaves, but give them time. Instead, they're trying to take over our government. So the sickness, the social phenomenon that we're having to deal with here of intolerance and hatred and whatever men do to each other, they practice first on women, is not something unique to Islam or unique to anything. So one must be, the only care I think is important for non-Muslims to exercise is to be very sure that you're critiquing across the board.
Right.
It doesn't seem, it's simple, isn't it?
Don't give anyone a pass.
Yeah.
So what I always suggest too is just ask yourself, if there was a church that said that women had to sit in the basement by the restrooms, would you be okay with that?
Right.
And then if not a church sending women into the basement, would you be okay with a church that sent blacks into the basement?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we stand up for racial justice but allow sexism to prevail?
Well, we do that a lot in other places as well, and my theory is that it's because men also suffer from racism, and whatever men suffer from is automatically serious. Then we have to take that seriously.
That is so intense, because I have, now in my later years, I'm being more contemplative about just this idea of the inequity of social justice, and it just, that's a really great way that you've identified it.
Well,
because I feel we end up having no privilege, and nobody cares then.
Right. As long as we share an oppression with the boys, if it's girls and boys, it'll be taken more seriously, whether it's class or race or ethnicity or gay rights. But if you separate out women by themselves, not so much.
Yeah. So how do we do it with issues when it's, women that are clearly the ones being denied it? I mean, I try to frame it, I have a son now, as you mentioned, and I try to frame, my absence of full rights in the community as something that is going to negatively impact him.
Mm-hmm, it is.
So it's like I have to try, and I have to bring it back to him. I'll never forget, I once explained to him, his name is Shibli, and I said, what if I had to go through the back door of the Toys R Us, and you were only allowed entry through the front door?
Right.
And so as a, wisecracking little boy, he said, well, I'd take your credit card. I'm like, good luck with that, So he took his privilege. I was like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I have born a chauvinist in the world.
No,
but
no.
Thankfully he has evolved because I still have had more time with him.
Yes, and I'm the mother of a son who can tell you that if you keep at it, they turn out just fine. But it's a tightrope, because on the one hand you want to raise the child in the full capacity of his humanhood and to be everything he can be. On the other hand, you want to make him aware that in my case, he has the privilege of white skin and he has the privilege of being male in a patriarchy. And so he has to be aware that those privileges very often are bought by the suffering of other people. But you don't want him to paralyzed by guilt either. It's tricky, but it's not impossible. I have to tell you, he turned out really good.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yes. Oh, I wish we had 3 times the amount of time that we have, but I hope you come back and as the new book develops, talk more about that, because
absolutely,
that sounds like a fantastic project, and I'm so glad you're writing it, and I'm so glad you're in the world.
Oh, and I'm so happy that you're there, and I just look forward to deepening this friendship with not only you, but your listeners and your fans. And so let's keep the conversation going. I'm happy to make new friends, still have space on Facebook. My name is just Asra Nomani, and my Twitter handle is @Asra Nomani, very easy to get. Email me, anyone who wants to have a conversation. I'm just a mom who works, the midnight shift after my duties are done with my son.
You're just terrific, Asra. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. The Women's Media Center 2015 Status of Women in the U.S. Media Report is now out. And although that's the good news, the rest of the news in it is mostly surreal. It's so bad. Here are just some quick samples. Men were 83%. Would you believe this? 83% of all directors, executive producers, writers, cinematographers, and editors for the 250 most profitable films in 2014. 83%. None of 2013's top 100 films had a black female director. Men accounted for 81% of broadcast, cable, and Netflix show creators 2012 to 2013. Men directed 86% of all TV episodes between 2013 and 2014. White men made up 56% of daily newspaper employees. White women made up 31%. Black women made up 2.19%, Hispanic women 1.83%, Asian women 1.64%, Native women 0.16%, and multiracial women 0.27%. Men accounted for roughly 74% of guests on major TV networks' Sunday morning news shows. Editorial boards of the 10 largest newspapers in 9 regions of the country had, on average, 7 men and 4 women. 78% of cable TV's foreign policy analysts and reporters were, you guessed it, men. At Facebook, Google, and Twitter, men accounted for 69 or 70% of the rank-and-file workforce in 2014. Among company executives, the percentage of men was even higher. And it goes on and on and on. It is absolutely surreal that we think we have a free media, or one that represents the people who are watching it, reading it, getting their news and information from it. Ergo, the need for the Women's Media Center and this report. If you go to womensmediacenter.com, you can download the report for free. It is the WMC's Status of Women in the U.S. Media Report for 2015, and the statistics are surreal. Grrr. Time for another short pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and in just a moment I'll return with a guest who will tell us things about pornography that are literally matters of life and death for women. And you know what? Matters of life and death and sanity for men. Be right back.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My next guest, Gail Dines, D-I-N-E-S, is professor of sociology and women's studies at Wheelock College. She's also a champion of sexual joy and sexual affirmation. In that, she is becoming the world's greatest expert on the multi-billion-dollar industry, multinational, that is pornography. Here is Gail Dines. Gail, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for asking me, Robin, and it's just a pleasure.
You have done such extraordinary good that is finally making its way bit by bit into public consciousness. You've been laboring in the extremely difficult vineyards of what pornography really is, a human rights violation against women and a form of torture and a disaster for males as well. Through the book Pornland, which I've talked about on this show, so listeners will remember this extraordinary book, Pornland, through a documentary that's now coming out, through the TEDx speeches, and through Culture Reframed. Tell us about Culture Reframed, and then let's be sure and backtrack and talk about the documentary and the TEDx talk.
Okay, so we began about 7 years ago with a non-profit called Stop Porn Culture, which was a kind of activist organization. And then what happened is I was on the road lecturing, and it really didn't matter where I was, in the US, in a college, in Australia, in Norway, in Sweden. The first thing that would happen is people would put their hands up and say, what can we do? And this was especially true for parents who were freaking out, because for many people over the age of about 35 to 40, when they think of porn, they think of Playboy, Penthouse, maybe Hustler. What they're not anticipating is the level of violence, torture, and hardcore cruelty that is now actually mainstream porn. I mean, listeners should understand that when a 12-year-old boy, which is the first age of looking at porn, when he puts porn into Google, he's not coming up with naked women smiling in a cornfield. He's coming up with images of sexual cruelty. And never before have we brought up a generation of boys with 24/7 access to hardcore porn. So parents would be sitting there thinking, oh my God, my son's 13, I've not had this conversation, what's he looking at? Or my daughter's dating these boys. So what we did is decided we have to do something. We have to give people programs, and especially parents. We're starting with parents. Our second program will be for therapists on how to deal with this. And we've brought together a stellar group of consultants in a public health framework, because really the thing about public health is it's multidisciplinary. You bring together educators, pediatricians, therapists, and you write programs and materials in a way that is really gets at the core of what the problem is. So we have this stellar team, and we're about to go live at the end of the year with really, how do you talk to your kids about growing up in a porn culture? And the most important thing around this is to not do it in a shameful way. The boys are extremely shamed by their use of porn. Remember, this 12-year-old boy, when he put porn into Google, he thought he was going to come up with breasts, maybe people having sex. He did not anticipate the level of violence that he was going to be catapulted into. And we argue that actually this is causing mass trauma for these boys. But nobody's explaining this. They just think it's arousal. But in that stomach is a pit, a toxic stew of arousal, fear, anxiety, and shame. So parents really don't know what to do. So we've decided we have to develop a series of multimedia, web-based programs which take parents through step by step. There's going to be sections for mothers, sections for fathers, and then, of course, the kid does not live in isolation in the family, so we're going to be talking about how to build communities around resistance and resilience to the porn culture. So this is the first feminist approach from a public health perspective on how to build resilience and resistance in kids to pornography.
And people can get in touch with Culture Reframed how? We'll say this again at the end of the program, but say it now.
Well, just go put Culture Reframed in, and then there's a place where you can actually email us, and we'll keep you on our emailing list. And as soon as we go live, we will send you an email. They can also get in touch with me through my website, gaildines.com, and that's out there as well. So you can just find me on the website, find Culture Reframed, send us an email, and we will then let you know when it's coming out.
That's fantastic. I mean, people I don't think do know. I know they don't know that 88% of, this is all from you and from Pornland, 88% of scenes from top-rented porn movies contain physical, sexual, and or verbal abuse against women. They don't know that they don't know the epidemic nature of this. Porn sites have more visitors per month than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. And Pornhub, one of the web's largest porn sites, had roughly 1.68 million visits per hour in 2013, and that porn makes up 30% of the total data transferred across the internet. That's staggering.
I know. And to give you an example of what happened, I did a grand round at one of the hospitals in Boston, which was mainly full of social workers who deal with violence against adolescent girls. And so here you have a group who are at the front line of dealing with sexual violence. And I have to say, like 20 minutes into my talk, there was literally hysteria in the room. The roof just jumped off because they said, how is it possible that we are dealing with violence against girls and we had never linked porn into this? And I had never been in a place where so many people were so upset. They were upset as social workers, but I have to tell you, they were profoundly upset as mothers as well, because it was mainly women. And this is what we find, is that parents just don't know what to do. And the truth is, unless you have a really rich set of skills and knowledge, how do you begin the conversation? Your 12 or 13-year-old boy or girl certainly doesn't want to sit and look you in the eye and talk about pornography. So this is why we have to bring experts in to build a skill set for parents, because you can't leave them alone. It's not an individual issue. Asking me, how can a parent keep a kid away from porn, is like asking me, how can a parent keep a kid away from pollution? Right. You can't. It's got to be a movement-based issue. It is not an individual-based issue. It is not a family-based issue. It is not even a community-based issue. It is a whole cultural issue. And what we're trying to do at Culture Reframed is shift the debate so people understand that this is probably the most serious public health crisis of the digital age.
But what you're doing is so scientifically based, and the research is so irrefutable that you've done, that it's a very different cup of tea than what many of us were doing over the past 40 years, which is, women against pornography, women trying to raise consciousness that this is really bad for women, etc. That was, by comparison with what you're doing, abstract rhetoric. And of course, we were called prudes and, and anti-sex, when actually we were trying to affirm joyful and constructive sex. But you come up, you've done the research, and you're in touch with people who are doing the research. And, that women in porn, the women who are in porn, are prone to a range of diseases that include gonorrhea of the eye, chlamydia of the anus, and rectal prolapse, and a huge high rate of PTSD. When you think about it, of course, is not at all surprising, or that many women leave the porn industry because they are literally dying there, and then they're pimped into prostitution. So porn not only does all the things that you've been saying it does, but it trains little boys to become Johns, to become pimps, to treat the women in their life like dirt, or worse than dirt.
And batterers, rapists, and that's, by the way, the extreme end. We also focus on the whole continuum.
Yes.
He might never actually, rape a girl or a woman, but what you're doing is shifting his identity. Boys get to porn at the very moment that they are beginning to develop what they call their sexual templates, and also, I would argue, their gender identity. And what porn does is it seeps into that adolescent brain and body in a way that actually he shapes shapes his identity and his gender construction around the images of porn. What's interesting is that when you look at, and I was very skeptical about addiction, but actually the more therapists I speak to, there's something really profound going on. And when you look at the porn that these boys habitually use, it's not Playboy or Penthouse, it's always the hardcore. And so what I would argue is not only are they becoming habituated to the violence and the sex combined, but I think they become habituated to a masculine identity that is one about power over women. That's right. So that's why I would argue a lot of the addiction programs are not going to work, because it's not enough to get him away from porn. You've got to shift the way he thinks about himself as a male in a patriarchal society. And because a lot of the addiction programs are done by non-feminists, they don't think about identity construction, masculinity and patriarchy. Their argument is, just like in AA, you get them away from alcohol. In porn, you get them away from the images. Well, how do you wash your brain out of those images? How do you change your identity? It's way more complicated. And I would just like to say the work that you did 40 years ago, I would not be here today without that work. I want to make that perfectly clear.
Well, that's very kind of you, but by comparison with what you're doing now and the effect, oh my God, that you're having, it just makes my heart beat faster with hope, because the repositioning of this, what it not only what it does to attitudes against women in our culture, what it does to the culture itself, how it gets mainstreamed in fashion photography and commercials and the objectification of women, what it does to women in porn, and what it does to male human beings, and to back that up with hard science is just it's so wonderful, Gail, the work that it's just fantastic. Now, say again, the TED Talk, how can people get the TED Talk? Because it'll just change your life if you haven't seen it.
Put into Google, Gail Dines, TEDx, YouTube, and it comes up immediately. And really, I would say it's my life's work condensed into 13 minutes, which was not easy, as you can imagine. But my book, Pornland, actually, obviously, is that 13 minutes expanded into a book with much more data. And the thing now, remember, is when you all started, there was virtually no research. We now have 40 years of empirical research, which shows that exactly what you were saying has been found to be true across psychology, sociology, media studies, and that's the really thing that I've got now at my fingertips that you didn't have, is 40 years of empirical research in peer-reviewed journals. And as a social scientist, you don't pick out one study here or there. You go with the weight of the research. And there is no question anymore that everything that you were saying 40 years ago has been absolutely shown by the weight of the research. And it's just getting worse and worse, because remember, when you started, we were talking about Playboy, Penthouse, you had to go to a porn shop, you had to find the porn. Today, you just put porn into Google. I mean, the change that you can now get it through any mobile device is just astounding.
And the documentary, say a word or two about the doc.
Well, the documentary was made by Media Education Foundation, which is one of the most progressive film companies out there today. And they basically took one of my lectures and really did an excellent job with adding visuals and making it really a compelling documentary. I was quite thrilled when I saw it at the end. It's only 35 minutes, but it really starts looking at the business of porn. Because remember, what people don't talk about is this is a global capitalist venture today that interfaces with all other global corporations. We're not talking about, some guy scurrying around in the back streets of Soho or whatever looking for porn. We're talking about now what I call pimps on Armani suits. These guys interface with venture capitalists, they interface with banks, with credit card companies. They are major businessmen. And the problem with that is, like any business, just as the food industry shapes the way we eat, just as the fashion industry shapes the way we dress, so too does the sex industry shape the way we have sex. If that was not true, then somehow porn would be the only industry in the world that had no cultural effect. And that, of course, is a ridiculous argument.
Gail, thank you for the work that you're doing. And thanks for being with us today on Women's Media Center Live.
Oh, well, thank you as well for all the wonderful work that you have done as well. Thank you.
It's time for one last break here. I'm Robin Morgan. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I will return in just a moment with some You Betcha fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back to some fighting words. When feminists talk about the family being the model for the state, we're really onto something. And yet the deep intensity of the defense of toxic institutions like the patriarchal family continues. It's where people's identity rests. Back to Hastert, as in at the beginning of the program. Imagine the town pressure if the rumor was circulating back when he was a young high school teacher, and Jean Carl was a young high school teacher, and there were rumors circulating about his abuse of a student, but in hushed tones because you didn't speak of such things in a nice community. It reflected on everyone. And so there was pressure to marry. And so he noticed that, and it seemed a way out. What would it have been like had he been able to fall in love with a kid his own age, and, if consensual and joyful, have sex with them, boy or girl? But that was not allowed. No. Abuse creates abuse. This much we know. Maybe he was abused as a child himself. And today porn becomes a primer to further the abuse, in particular against women, but not exclusively. Yet these institutions, the family on one extreme, pornography on the other, and they're not really that opposite if you go deeper than the surface, both are defended by choirs of angels. The First Amendment, family sacredness, applehood, and mother pie. Oh, my God. But when he proposed to her, saying, "People seem to think we ought to get married," I bet she knew what he meant. It was hardly a loving proposal. With all of the pressures on boys to become Johns and pimps and manly men, spare a moment for the child who was Denny Hastert and his horrifying fall from power, as well as that of his wife. And look at your own family, those who raised you and those you're raising, because this is something that is systemic, but that we can change where we are, who we are, and what we do about it. And that's it for today. The last straw this week is the Duggars. Need I say more? I don't think so. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all the previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton. Senior Producer, Crystal Williams Chancellor. And our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and do not forget to join us next week, right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.